not have the existing customer testimonials that you want about dividends, craft a letter that is a testimonial seeking letter to go out to the list. So for instance, you could say, hey, Zach here, I want to know, have you made money from dividends? So if you could fill out this 4-question short survey, that would greatly help me. And just by the way, any responses that you have, I might use in marketing material. So you can send a 4-question, 5-question survey out to the readers and ask them things like, have you ever bought a dividend stock before? And if so, how much money have you made? Number 2, what did you do with the money? Number 3, if you had to recommend dividend investing to a friend, what would you tell that friend? And you get responses back that are amazing. You know, I made $52,000 last year. I used it as a down payment on a beach house, and I'd tell anybody that they need to use Zach's strategy. That's how you find great testimonials, right? Is that you survey the readers and ask them leading questions for what you want to get out of it. I can't tell you how many times that people read promos from our competitors, copywriters read promos from our competitors, and they come to someone like Ryan and I and they go, how did this person get such great testimonials? Well, they got it because they crafted a survey about the exact same fucking thing that they wanted to write about. So they knew they wanted to write about MLPs. They knew they didn't have any existing testimonials about MLPs. So they crafted a survey to the readers about MLPs to get the answers that they fucking wanted. Okay, that's it. Sorry. Back to that.
Again, any legal means, right? Any legal means to get what you need.
Real quick, so since we have different income rules here, can we use another income rules?
No.
No.
This is a big rule. Let me answer this very quickly. We have a lot of competing products in Agora Financial right now, even within Agora Financial, right? So if you look at the income category, just the pure income category, what Lloyd is asking, we have 3 editors who are working on pure income stuff. We have Zach Scheit, who writes for Matt Inslee's franchise. We have Mike Burnett, I don't even know how to say his last name, who writes for Aaron Gensler's franchise. And we have Nihilus Mativ, who writes for Pete Coyne's franchise. You cannot use proof for one guru's franchise to sell the other guru's franchise. Not good. So if a customer writes in and says, Zach, you've made me $52,000, you can't take Zach's testimonial and use it for Nihilus Mativ, because that doesn't make Zach very happy. So that's the only rule. You can't use guru-specific testimonials for other gurus' letters. That's not like a legal rule. Like legally you could, as ladies and gentlemen who are going to play by the rules, we're just going to play by that rule. Don't use Guru 1 for Guru 2's sales letter. Don't use Guru 1's track record to sell Guru number 2's sales letter. We just had a mistake with the Altucher franchise where someone wrote a promo for James Altucher that used Zach Scheit's put selling record as proof. Like, that's not great, because James was doing the same service, but James had no proof. So they said, hey, a similar service has a 95% win rate. Well, that was Zach's service. We shouldn't use Zach's service to sell James Altucher's newsletter. So just, again, it's not illegal. It's not a problem legally. It's just to play nice and all be friends amongst all the imprints. We should not do that.
All right, social proof, media mentions. People probably use this way too much because it's pretty easy to find, but it's another way to add proof. Just find a similar newspaper story about your big idea and pick the best quote out of there. Social proof, again, mostly is borrowed. Celebrity, authority figures using whatever you're talking about. A lot of times they need to be public figures, which I don't want to get to again more than that in the legal sense, in the legal session, but because we have to be careful to use, we can't use private people's names, but if you could find that someone who is a public figure using it, such as an ex-president or ex-congressman or ex-senator or ex treasury secretary, then you can use them to borrow social proof for authority figures.
If the person is private, you just can't use their name.
Yeah.
You could use the proof,
Yeah.
you just can't use their name. Hey, one hedge fund manager is making this. You just can't say, one hedge fund manager named Kyle Bass is making this. So you can still use the proof. With a private person, you just can't use their name.
Highly believable source, credibility, something Kyle kind of brought up in the beginning. Very powerful. Backtesting historical examples. I probably should have added track record of the service or past successful predictions. But all these are like historical examples, things that happened in the past. Now, they don't necessarily have to be the exact same picks. They don't have to be historical track record from the service. It could be ones that we backtest. Backtesting meaning we cherry pick an example from the past and use that as proof. If you can find ones where they actually did it, it's probably a lot more powerful, because a lot of the language you have to use for backtesting is to be very explicit that we're talking about is something that could have happened in the past. But a lot of people ask you about impact system and where I got those examples. All those examples were actually backtested, so it's not as big a hindrance as you think, because it's a brand new service, so there wasn't even track record at this point.
Two things on that one. I'm going to give you guys one ninja technique and then continue to hammer that open loop that I was telling you. So here's a ninja technique, and you're going to see this by reading copy. It's very, very tricky. It's legally true, but it gets really tricky. Okay, so let me give you the scenario. An editor has recommended a stock. We'll call it Company X. And Company X traded for $1 when the editor recommended it. So it's a real, on-paper recommendation. However, the stock went up 100%, it went to $2, and the editor recommended selling said stock. Okay, so you got 100% gain. Pretty good, right? So in copy, what most people do is they write about that 100% gain. Hey, I'm Zach, I recommended Company X, it went up 100%, and here's where I said to sell. Cool, right? Here comes the ninja technique. With a little bit of wordsmithing, let's say that Company X ended up going up to $15, right? So Zach recommended it at $1, it went up to $15. The problem is Zach recommended selling it at $2. Here comes the ninja technique. You can say, Zach, I recommended a stock that had readers held on, went up 1,500%. Instead of saying that he made 100% on it. Does that make sense?
Love it.
So what you're doing is you're wordsmithing around it, not to tell them that you closed the trade at 100%. You could say, which is legally true, I, Zach, recommended a stock at $1 that had readers held on to the absolute high, could have made you 1,500%. So you got the same gain. Does that make sense? Zach recommended the stock, he recommended selling. Two ways to portray that in copy. One, I made 100%, open and close made 100%, or I recommended a stock that went up 1,500%.
And I think there's some, like, that's totally morally ethical thing too, if you have it in the right context. If you're trying to prove that you're a good stock picker, right, then who cares when you sold it? You picked it, right? Like, that's a true statement. Now, if your point is, like, I know how to get you out in the trade, and that's not true, then
Yes.
that's a different context. In that case, then that wouldn't be legally good thing to do, and it wouldn't be morally ethical. But if you're saying, like, these people do it all the time, like, oh yeah, I picked that one, and it went up. It's pretty common.
Again, the only way you're going to see this, how people use it in copy, is to do that active reading of copy. If you disconnect yourself from a piece of copy and you just read passively, you'll never notice that people are doing things like that.
Yeah.
If you read it actively, you're like, that wording is really odd when you read it actively around that particular recommendation. And then you read it and you're like, that wording is odd because it's legally true, but they wordsmithed it around the higher gain. Does that make sense? So that's one of those ninja techniques there. So you'll see that a lot of times where people, you'll circle these games and be like, how, I don't understand, like I looked in the editor's track record and they don't actually have that gain. Well, they don't have that gain because of the wordsmithing that's been around it, that they didn't actually sell it at 1,500%, they held on, if you would have held on, for 1,500%. So I just want to hammer that home because that's something in historical examples that you can do. Second thing is that we have a big, easy way where you don't have to do any of that yourself, that we'll share in a moment.
The loop.
You're a bad person.
Info gap. Dimensionalization of numbers, which is doing the math to read it. A lot of people are enumerate, meaning similar to being illiterate, meaning they don't know what numbers mean, or they're very hard to read numbers. I'm pretty enumerate. It's very, like, a lot of people don't realize that doubling your money is 100%. They think that's 200%. A lot of people can't distinguish between 100% and 1,000%. They just don't, the numbers just don't mean anything to them. So the more you can dimensionalize the number by showing a picture of it, by doing the math for the reader, saying if you do this, do that, it's very important. A lot of people are enumerate. You don't want people to miss out that 1,000% is more than 100%, because for some people it doesn't mean anything. But if you say, well, you could have made a lot more money, then they'll understand.
Okay, so 2 things about that. Another ninja technique that I'm gonna tell you about in a second. But before we get there, rule of threes, right? So you got 3 things happening. Look back at that dimensionalization of numbers. And I mentioned this earlier. Number 1, you have a percentage. Number 2, you have a chart. And number 3, you've turned that percentage into real dollars. So you're satisfying 2 things there. You're dimensionalizing the numbers, and you're giving them the rule of 3 as far as a proof statement. The number, percentage, the chart, the dollars. So that's kind of cool, right? People get really lazy when they do this. When you read copy, watch how many times people state percentages, never show charts, never show dollars. Like a simple thing you can do to make all your copy better is anytime you state a percentage, try to show a chart, try to turn it into dollars.
Next page, specifics, facts, statistics, specific numbers. Just look at that chunk of copy that I pulled out, that example, and just try to see the density of information in there. You know, it's not, there's lots of trucks or lots of supercomputers. It's not that, you know, like a lot of people are going to get this supercomputer. It's 575 million are going to get it by December 31st, 2015.
Let me, do you mind real quick, back up? Let me come back to this dimensionalization of numbers really quick, because I didn't tell you guys the ninja trick. The ninja trick, when you dimensionalize numbers, is, what is this, Arena Pharmaceuticals or something?
Yeah.